Hello everybody, it's Larry and welcome to today's video. We have a good one for you today, and it's kind of based on the one where we did the step-by-step on how to find the biological father. And in that video I used the Watto tool, or what are the odds tool, and I used version 1, and I had a lot of people making comments saying, Larry, why didn't you use version 2? It's so much better. And the honest answer is, well, I had it bookmarked, so I just clicked it, went there, and it worked. Okay, but in order to use version 1, I ended up manually adding in, these child lines, and then manually added on that, uses hypotheses and things like this. So I had to do that manually. And so version 2 actually does this for me. So before we get going to show version 2, first off, I want to give a great big shout out to Johnny Pearl and Leo Larkin for the brainstorming and the execution of both versions of this. And, I used it to help find, this person's biological father, and this was a key component. And you should be using this themselves. So great job, Johnny and Leah, for executing and developing this product, both versions. If I was giving it an A through F system, I'd give it an A plus 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 plus. I mean, it's really, I'd probably develop some, new numbering or alphabet system. You know how I like to just rename things on my own. So I'd give them a new score of, superior and beyond. Anyway, so we're going to look at this in V2. And the first thing you notice is, well, it looks exactly the same. And I add this child exactly the same. And so that part didn't look any different. And again, kudos for how smooth and easy this is. That is so nice. All right. But where the real power is right here where it says suggest hypotheses. Now, don't forget to put a year in here. I did for a while, and it kind of threw me off. Like, why isn't it giving me the hypotheses? Oh, yes, it says clearly you must put in a year. So make sure you put in the year, the birth year of the person, or estimated, and then suggest hypotheses. Okay? What it does now is really, really good. It shows you all of the possible locations that person can match you. And you can see right here, it says unknown sibling, child, that I put in. But look at here. It went down a level and put an unknown half sub and their child. And right up here, put a half sub and children here. So it put in 3 more possible branches under John F. Steenrod that I had not put in myself. And it did the same thing over here under Elizabeth. And under Ephraim, it put quite a bit more. And then when you come over here, it added it at a higher level and even in a higher level. So with that, you have to know that you've got all these extra hypotheses. And I think for a lot of people, having that great superset that, the answer is one of these 34, okay? It is. They've gone through and done a real good job of looking to include everything on the bell curve. The problem is that even though it has these numbers assigned, I find that it's not what I would say is consistent with the peaks of the bell curve. I find that data, there's something else about the algorithm, and I think it's taken that year into effect in a way that maybe they should rethink about doing it. And now, don't get me wrong, 50 years from now, what they're doing, I think, is spot on. But today, because all of these DNA matches, all 3 of these generations, they don't take them as time goes on. Kind of like a census, every 10 years, things happen and it gets added to the cumulative total. Well, these DNA tests were all taken in the last decade. So it doesn't matter whether you're 100 or whether you're 13, the test is taken in that same 8-year period. It's not like, you died, 80, 90 years apart. Or were born 80, 90 years apart. So I think there may be some presumptions along with that in this algorithm, and I think that'll show itself here in a minute. So here's what I can say. I really like the Sherlock Holmes method. You take what's possible, eliminate the impossible, and whatever you're left with, no matter how improbable, that's your answer. And this does that. Okay, so if you are wanting to cast a net and catch the fish for sure and then examine each one to see what it is, this is definitely the way to go. That being said, you notice how I took the ball and pattern method and I was able to say, okay, it's most likely here, so I'm going to focus my efforts in this area. And I was able to cast a much smaller net and look at a lot fewer fish. In fact, I was able to look right at the correct fish all the way through. So using the ball and pattern, I went from these 240s, which would be about the 212 nodes, And so from them, I went and used that folded ball and pattern, 3400, 1700, 850, 425, 212, 106. So what that means for those of you who are watching this video up front, 3400, 1700. So if this person has a shared, person here, they're either going to be a half sibling at 1700 or, a full sibling, which would make them 3400, ish, because, it's rounded numbers. Again, we're doing quick estimations. So 3417, the descendants with this MRCA at the same level are going to here be 850, 425, and 212, 106, whether it be a single path or a dual path or a half kinship or a full kinship. So this is where I focused, and I focused down below this area. I also took in some statistical probabilities. Again, I like to initially use an Occam's razor focus and say, whatever's most likely is the most probable. So going in here, this person's 71, all right? So this would be the 91 years olds, the 11 years old, 131 year olds in comparison to somebody here. Well, when doing that, you have to remember that remarriage is much less likely, and children with a second marriage was much less likely. Yes, women did die during childbirth. Yes, men did die, during wars. Yes, both, had issues with maybe settlement raids or disease or other things that, it was a different life. It was a tougher life. Okay. So there were occasions. So don't get me wrong, there's that possibility. But you're out at the bottom sides of the bell curve. You're not into that. And so just to kind of get how likely it is and to really understand the differences in that probability, for the Occam's razor, let's look at DNA Painter. And so we're going to just say, this is the 212 level. So we're just going to put in 212 because that's basically the 212 level. And it's going to tell us that we're right here. You got the second cousin on the full kinship side, and you got the first cousin once removed on the half kinship side. So we're going to take a look at the numbers on this bell curve. So this is from the full data set of people in here. So right here at the peak, 159, 148. So you add those together, roughly 300. And you can add these two together for another 160. So you can say these four at the peak were about 460. Now for round numbers, I'm just going to call it 500. We're going to inflate the number, make it bigger than it really is. Now we come over here to the other side where we have the 200 most likely. Look at that. The peak of the bell curve, just the one row is 1,000. That's twice as likely as the entire other side, just this one. You add in another 950, another 750, another 500, and you add all of those in together. Now you've got it 8 times more likely to be in these 5 in the distribution than it is over there on the other side. And that's really about what it's like as far as the half kinships. It's about 6 to 8 times more likely the other way. So what I saw here was the Watto tool gave this half sibling path 922,000, and it gave the full sibling path 265,000. And when you look at those from the ball and pattern or something else, they both work out exactly the same. Statistically, the math on the centimorgans, the probability should be exactly the same. So if you were to factor in the data sets and how big the data sets are on one side as compared to the other, which means how many full siblings versus half siblings statistically over this period of time are, then this full sibling line should have been not just 3 times more, but maybe 6 or 8 times more likely than the half sibling. Let's take a look. So right here, we're going to stay with the hypothesis 21. We're just going to go up and down. 3,400, 1,700, 850, 425, 212. Hits spot on, right? Okay, it's a single path, so that's spot on. It's at the 212 level. So we come over here to our 265 person. We go 3,400, 17, 850, 425, 212, 106 for path 1. It's a full kinship, which means there's 2 grandparents that we're going through. So we have another 106, which ends up being the 212 again. Both of them are spot on. Okay, so the likelihood on those lines, I've got this half first cousin once removed with a data set of total of 500, and that's inflated by 40. And then we've got the one over here, nearly 4,000. So I'm not sure why it's over here. Now, I'm going to give you a guess. I don't know this to be true. This is just me observing. Remember I entered that year? Okay, if my person is 71 years old, what's the likelihood that this is a 50 and a 30? And it kind of did a sliding scale to accommodate the length of the data set, the 3 generations. Now, me, on the other hand, I looked at this data initially differently. I saw this as a distribution. So just like each one of these has its bell curve, no matter where you click, you've got that bell curve of distribution. All right. Well, I've got this data set of people that tested. And so I've got 1 here, 2 here, 2 here. I've got a data set that kind of goes up and hasn't gone down yet. So I'm looking that it's probably in here, but most likely at this area. Okay. So you've got 1 generation, she's 71. It's probably not going to be here because that would be 91, 101. So this would be more likely somebody in their 90s, and these would be people in their 50s. Okay? So I looked at it from that perspective, and it turned out that it was right. So, but that doesn't mean that I was right. I was just kind of focused in, and in my mind, I've looked at these numbers so much that when I see a 212, I'm looking here, not looking here. But that's where I really like this tool, because I'm not looking here because it's 8 times less likely. I might spend some time checking out the next most likely in these patterns, which is right here, 32, rather than coming down here and looking at some of these other possibilities. Now, to that, some of these aren't realistically possible, okay? And some of them aren't even mathematically possible, in my opinion, although technically it does fit the range, because once you go out to a distance, 0 is a possibility, or, I guess now they show as low as 6 or 8. So 8 is a possibility. So let's look at this. Right here, we have a half kinship from here, but let's look at it from a generational perspective. My person is 71 years old. That's 20, 40, 60, 80, 100 years. If my person's 70 years old, that means these people will be born in about 30 years, and these people will be born in about 10 years. Not realistic, okay? Now, same thing with here. I think all 5 of these fail in the likelihood, because just on generational, 20, 40, 60, 80 years younger than somebody that's 71 years old. I know some of you are saying, well, Larry, some families had, the oldest sibling and the youngest sibling. I get it. I've got that in my family. I've got a mother who I was born when she was 19, her mother when she was 19, her mother when she was 19, her mother when she was, I think, 17, 18. Okay, so, and then another part of my family, they had, at 25, at 22, at 24. And so basically, I have an extra generation. And the same period of time happened, and these 2 siblings, I have 4 generations up to that person while they have 3. And that's how I ended up in one area. I actually have a living first cousin 3 times removed that's 96 years old. And I'm 57. So to have somebody 3 generations older than me is a highly unlikely scenario. So yes, it does happen. But we're talking about, when you click on any one of these distributions, you're talking about it being here on the bell curve, not here on the bell curve. And we're talking thousands and thousands of people. So yes, it could be 9 out of 4, 5, 6,000 people, or, even maybe down in here. It's possible, not where I would look first. Okay. I would spend my time looking in that big net, in those big bars first on the probabilities, and then I would work my way out rather than focusing in on there. But on this, 45,000 is my 3rd biggest number, and this 45,000 is also my 3rd biggest number. So when I look down here, that 922 is number 1. The correct answer was 265. 45, 45, 45, 45. I got a lot of 45s down in there before I get to the 32s. So the net's a little too big. But again, the purpose of this is to catch the fish, and it does. The answer right here is certainly in here. Okay, so it does catch the fish, and for that you have to applaud V2. It does exactly what you want. It casts the net and catches exactly that kinship. But just like on these people, 20, 40, 60 years older. If my person is 71, that makes this person 131, and both of these people 111. And both of these people in their 90s. Again, since the tests were all given in the last year, that means they had to take the test on or after their 122nd birthday. And these people, had to take that test on or after their 102nd birthday. And that's 3 people after 102 years old, with one, after 122. And then these obviously took them in their 90s, which is possible and even likely in some scenarios. So, but these 4 as well as these 5, I think, are a bit much. And again, these numbers here are extremely too high, and I found that this number on the hypothesis on the half kinship, it should be 8 times less likely statistically than this one. Now, it is under here, and it was a new line, and it is something that I did not add. So for that, let's say that I was wrong and it wasn't here. Well, then they would have caught it right there. So the fact that they cast a net that caught all the possible answers, I like. And even if it did catch some of them that aren't correct. What I would like to see is a little bit better initial focus than me going through here and finding the numbers and trying to figure out where to go. So with that, again, like I said, if I come up here, 3,400, 1,700, 850, 425, 212, 106. It's almost a guarantee that the number is going to be under this. Now, there is a little bit of a loss of clarity on this as well. So we have this person right here at 163. Their child would be approximately half of that. So let's just say 80s. Now, it's not always half. So here's a 202, 104. It's a little more than half. Here's a 241 and only a 33. So there can be significant drop off after this point. But before this point, those numbers, while they can vary significantly, don't wildly go out of that ball and pattern. Now, once you get beyond that, second cousin, get to the second cousin once removed, third cousin level, it can get pretty wild on how far those balls will slide. So looking at here, this one would be an 80, let's just say 80 something, and it's the 105. So this is the 106 level for them. We're going to call this the 106 level for them because that's obviously a low 212 level. Even if this is the 80, that's more likely to be the 106 than the 53. And then we have the 241 and the 202. So if I'm looking here, here's a 106. Here's a quote 106. These are the 212s. Of these 3 lines, where is it most likely that my person fit under? And so just by looking, I can see, roughly a 106, roughly a 106, roughly a 212, roughly a 212, and this 212 evidenced by this, verifying 104, then it's most likely I'm underneath this Ephraim. And again, when I did the ball and pattern, 3,417, 850, 425, 212, 106, again, it confirmed, I should be under here. Because to get over to here, I would end up being 53 and 26 to get to that same level. So that should be a 53 unless I had, 53 would be a dual, and, half of that 26 would be a singular connection. So that wasn't very likely. It's most likely going to be under Ephraim. So with that, using the ball and pattern and using the statistical probability, of the likelihood of, the same centimorgans, let's call it 212 here, 212 here, or let's say there's both for 224. This one, a very small distribution set. Here, a very large distribution set. 8 times more likely to be on that full kinship line right here than on the half kinship line. So I think this is a bit much. Maybe it should be shaded, and say, hey, this is like a tier 3, but it's not a tier 3. This is the number 3 and number 3 most likely possibility. And these 5 simply aren't realistically going to be the answer. It will be 5 or 3 out of 8,000 times. So I can't fault him for including it. But I can say that out of 8,000 people who listen to this video and try this, 7,997 of you will be glad that you didn't do these early on. And same thing over here. And same thing over here. If you were to do the ball and pattern method and say, okay, I'm underneath this person, and you focused in this area, and you cut out the ones that were 60 years older than a 70-year-old, and the 40 years old and 70-year-olds, and realize that these 8 and these 5 aren't really as likely, and these aren't really as likely, and you focus in on these 12 possibilities, with these being obviously less likely, even though that number again is 45,000. If you focused in here, you're probably going to find your answer faster. Okay, so bottom line, do I recommend this tool? Absolutely. I mean, this is an incredible tool. And I know it sounded kind of negative. I'm not negative on this at all. I'm sold. I'm a buyer. I'm a connoisseur. I'm a fan. Mark me down as #1 fan. This is a great, great tool. And for those who maybe aren't strong in genealogy and haven't done this a lot, man, having all the possibilities, that's great. And even with what seemed like maybe negative comments on some of the numbers, really wasn't. It was just a true comparison. But if I was to work this list, hypothesis 21, check it out and validate, it's not it. Might take me an hour or so. Then I get to number 2 and I work this out, and bang, sure enough, it is that one. Now, truth be known, is it showed a single unknown sibling. There were actually 5 additional unknown siblings, so again, that would take many hours to get to that person that was correct, which it did for me. But then by the same token, that's the right answer. So number 2 most likely was the right answer. So the Watto tool did focus and point me right to where it was. Well, it pointed to the person next to where it was. So it did get to that. So there were 34 hypotheses, and number 2 was actually the right answer. So for that, like I said, A++++. The vision on this, the ideas on this, I do think that the algorithm could use some tweaking in order to make that the full kinship more probable than the half kinship. And that's going to be true in pretty much every case. So when you look at that, here's a first cousin once removed, which is also 212 level, first cousin once removed, or a half first cousin right here. So you look at those distributions, 159, 148, and you come over here, you've got the same distribution patterns, okay? And even up here, you got that distribution pattern. Look, that's not very likely. It's there. So if I was to look at this half great aunt up here at 208, the set of all those in the hundreds of thousands in this data set, you got 1 here, 2, 7, plus 18, 25, 26, plus 8, 34. So there were 34 people fit that totally. Okay? So if I come down here, this half, great that we just looked at is the number 3 most likely hypotheses, even though there was only a handful of people out of the hundreds of thousands of people that are in that DNA statistics. To have that to be the 3rd most likely, as compared to over here, just seems to be that the year is being factored in too strong. And I would say I get it, because theoretically, if this was a census and years from now, what I would do is I would box that piece of code and keep it handy, because it's going to be spot on accurate. Once you start getting the DNA test over a period of 100 years, you insert that piece of code and bang, it's going to make it right. But since all of these people that tested, all tested within an 8-year period, and there's not that linear timeline distribution of tests, all the tests are the same, and so a person has to be alive to take a test. So they had to be alive within the last 8 years. So thinking that somebody could realistically be in the 130s in comparison to here, if this is the 71, that's a 50, a 1. Let's just say at 15, 15, 30, 45, 60, 75 years, and she's 71 years old. Even if you said that every one of the women in this line gave birth at the age of 15 and were pregnant at the age of 14, these people still would not yet be born. So, and so while it's possible under the most extreme situations, hundreds of thousands, if not a million people have their tests, and we're talking about low, less than half in the double-digit range, that's really, really an unlikely scenario. Certainly not a number 3. Well, there you have it. That's the Watto version tool. And, man, claps and hands off to Johnny Pearl, Leah Larkin for this tool. People of all skill levels can help this. Like I said, I didn't put in the half sibling lines, which, for here, 440, 435, and I think that's something that I need to pay a little bit more attention to. It might make me not bang my head on a wall quite so much, but I think now I can just spot it. So if I have, like right here, if I'm looking and saying ball and pattern fits here, it also will fit up one and over through a half kinship line, through a singular. So I think the reason I haven't done that is, like I said, divorce and the other things up here were less likely. In fact, as statistics would show, 8 times less likely. So it's 8 times more likely to be here. But, 1 in 8, that's a pretty significant number as compared to, 34 out of hundreds and hundreds of thousands of tests. So, it's probably something I need to keep an eye out for and be my next go-to rather than going up or down right here. I probably need to jump from here over to the half sibling line a little faster than probably what I'm doing, and that might shortcut me some hours. And I would not have even thought about that except for having evaluated this tool. So I'm extremely appreciative of that, and I love how in every line it gave an unknown sibling and unknown. This is an unknown half sibling. See, I removed that hypotheses. Unknown half sib, unknown sib. So the fact that they added that in, I think. Whoops, I put the hypothesis on the wrong person. All right. So whoops. Define a half sibling. I don't want to do that. I just want to close it. All right, here, put that hypothesis back. So I like the fact that it added in that half sibling line as a possibility for me. That's something that I have probably been neglecting a little too much in my research, because as this has demonstrated to me through the evaluation, it is 1/8 as likely, but that's a pretty good number. So to that, I want to say, again, we should all be thanking Johnny Pearl and Leah Larkin for this tool. This is an absolutely amazing tool. And I love this V2 where it casts the big net. I think that if you still use the ball and pattern methods and a folded ball and pattern like I showed you, it's going to help you focus in on this big net, on exactly where to look for that fish. Probably a little better than the number scores are giving you here. This one being third most likely, third most likely, third most likely, when these really aren't likely at all. And this one most certainly is not really likely. This is that one that we saw, okay? Or actually this one. Actually, no, was it this one? Yeah, that's 17. So we get up there, you get into some craziness when you get that many generations apart, especially with somebody whose test is that age. So there you have it. That's version 2. 2 thumbs up, 2 big toes up. I mean, I 10 out of 10. It can't be done much better. It really is a great tool. It will help you find what you're looking for. So cast this big net. If you got you a brick wall, use the V2, cast the big net. But don't forget to use the ball and pattern on these matches to kind of figure out where the most likely scenario is. And don't forget, as you add more and more DNA matches to this, then this kind of solidifies itself in a real quick method. And before I go, let me show you what I mean there. Remember I told you that there was a 715 popped in after I'd found the answer. And so we're just going to kind of look at that. Here was the person that was the one we're looking for. We came up here and we had a half kinship to hypothesis 17, and then they had, whoops, the half relationship didn't take there. There we go. And they had a child, and this child came in with a 715 centimorgans. And look at that. By just adding one more person, it really honed in exactly to where we had looked. Okay, we looked here because of the ball and pattern, and so we were looking in here, and it turned out to be here. And once this came in, it solidified that as the answer, and it knocked out all the rest of these. So, don't despair, because as you put this in, you may get all of these kinships, and you just put them all in, and it will eliminate those. that being said, there is a nice little quirk here, or a strange little quirk here. Notice how it eliminated all these. There's only two possibilities left, right? Watch this. I'm going to remove my hypotheses. I'm going to leave in this added person, but without that half kinship, and now I'm going to tell it to suggest hypotheses again. Should show up 2, right? No, now it gives me 6 possibilities. Now, it does correctly identify the correct answer here with 4,000 and nothing else over 1,000, but now, even though I've got, this child here as a, the half sibling here, it's created a sibling line hypothesis branch, and it's gone up here and created both a sibling and half sibling line hypothesis branch. These were not into the previous. So that kind of is unusual, that when I looked at all the possible solutions for before, that now, these under this unknown was split out. So when we take this was the unknown sibling, we're just going to delete this line, make it like it was before. Okay, and now we're going to tell it to do the suggestions. All right, so coming up here, it didn't have, it had these right here as the children unknown sub, unknown half sub, and it removed those when I put it in. But when I went the other way, it gave those value again, which I found to be a little bit odd. So I would still put everything in, because 6 is a whole lot easier to go through than 34, and the right answer stuck its thumb out really big. So create your tree, put as many of those centimorgan matches in as you can, use the Watto tool, and I am pretty confident if the data is out there to be found to confirm it, you'll get your answer. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. It's kind of weird since you can see me now. If you haven't subscribed, why not? It's free, right? Click the bell notification icon, and that way, whenever a video comes out, you'll know immediately, and you'll be one of the first to be able to see the new information. All right? And don't forget the QR code up here at the top. If you'd like to help me, you saw the video where I helped this person, and when I do that, it turns around and it helps you too. And so as I look over tools and see the things that can help you, help refine you, if you could support, in an ongoing subscription of, $1 or $5 a month, that goes a long way. If it's a singular donation, just something to help keep the caffeine coming to keep me awake while I do all these videos, that would be appreciated too. Well, and I say that, people are like, well, Larry, why do you need the caffeine for the videos? Well, as you may or may not know, I worked 36 hours straight on that person's, finding their father. And I made the video at the end why this stuff is so fresh in my head. That's why you see my videos, they're really unedited, and you can tell, by, the conversation, because there's mistakes in it there sometimes. And, sometimes, after 36 hours, at the end of a video, I can see that it's kind of trailing off, and I have to wrap it up because I'm doing all that time without, stopping in the middle and taking a drink so as not to interrupt the video. So, when I say I need more caffeine for the video, it's because typically those are after I've helped somebody and I'm in between, and I'm like, okay, this I think could help somebody, so let me do a video on this. And so please consider, don't see, I'm getting tired on it again. Consider support with some caffeine to keep me awake, or let me know in the comments if you don't mind me taking a drink in the middle so that I can, focus all the way through these things a little better. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll talk to you again soon.